It's a pleasure to be here. Very, very big thank you to Kevin and Nina for the invitation. It's very nice to see Kong, who was overlapping with me at MIT. Kevin made the first joke that I brought the cold weather for me with Montreal, so I apologize for that. Very happy to be here. So today my talk is going to be about generative AI for pricing. It's a new work I did in the last few months. And it's all actually started with my forthcoming book. So I spent the last year and a half working on my new book, starting from a realization that most of my work since my PhD days in the last 16 years was on two topics, either on pricing, data-driven pricing optimization, or on AI. And when I talk about AI, I talk about a very broad definition of AI, machine learning, deep learning. And then I decided to write a book at the intersection of these two topics. The title of the book is going to be Pricing in the Age of AI. And it's going to be forthcoming in September of this year with MIT Press. So I'm very excited about publishing this book in a few months. Now, this book has 10 chapters, including one chapter, chapter 7, on Gen AI for pricing, which is in some way the flagship chapter of the book. And today I'm going to focus only on this chapter. So today I won't present the entire book. I will present a chapter on generative AI for pricing. I don't think I need to convince you, all of us agree that generative AI is a big disruption in the entire business world, arguably also for the entire society. And the question I want to tackle for the next hour is how can we use generative AI, so think about tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, to successfully support pricing decision. I want to use generative AI to recommend pricing for products or services. And if we do so, what are the implications and what are the risks? So that's what we're going to dive in. Actually, I have one paper that got published 3 days ago at MIT Sloan Management Review called How to Use Gen AI for Pricing, which is going to be the basis of the talk today. The paper is available online on my website. You can find it. So the outline for the next hour, we're going to start by taking a deep dive into generative AI. First, I would like to claim the fact that it provides a democratization of AI. Now everybody can just go, write a prompt, and get access to very sophisticated models, large language models, to support any type of decisions. The second part of the outline is the fact that prompting is everything. Like prompting, the inputting of the instructions to the AI, is equally important from developing the models. And then the bulk of the talk, the majority of the talk, however, or if not a bit more, is going to be about 3 use cases. The first use case is going to be pricing real estate. Second use case is going to be pricing used cars. And the third is going to be pricing hourly rates for contractors or freelancers. Think about Upwork or freelancers. So again, like I'm going to go a bit fast about those two parts, and then we'll take a deep dive into this bullet point, which is going to be the biggest important part of the talk. Then we're going to go back to market research, data augmentation, and data scraping through generative AI, which can be seen as an input to the pricing decision, right? So you want to develop some type of market intelligence. Generative AI can also help develop that intelligence. Then we're going to talk about automating the MLOps pipeline. MLOps stands for Machine Learning Operations Pipeline. That's a very new topic I'm working with a student of mine. And then if time permits, we'll look at the impact of competition in the sense that if all the companies in the world are using generative AI for pricing, what will the market become in the future? And then we'll conclude. So without further ado, let's get started. The first bullet point is about democratizing AI for large masses, for individuals, for startups. So basically, generative AI, as I already said, is a game changer for companies. It's literally kind of a new toy that is very powerful, that is very big, can really impact a lot the business world. The way I see it, it has 4 advantages. Advantage number 1, ease of use, right? If you think about machine learning, like what I did for the last 15 years, you have to get a lot of data, you have to fine-tune the model, you have to do a lot of technical expertise. Here you don't need any technical expertise, right? So it's just interface, you input the prompt, anybody can use this. Second advantage, low cost and fast deployments. You don't need to purchase an expensive license, and you just need to write a prompt, and you can use it. Third advantage, flexible thinking. And that's a big one. If you think about pricing intelligence or machine learning methods, typically you have rule-based, you have some learning from the data, you have some sort of constraints around the learning process. Here, what is beautiful about LLMs, large language models, you don't have any constraints by pre-programmed logic. It can propose creative strategies. It can think outside the box. And the last advantage, democratization is, again, the biggest claim I want to make on that slide. It's democratizing access to pricing tools. In all my pricing projects I did in the last 10 years, I worked with a large company. They have a lot of data. They have big pockets. Typically, a pricing project will cost $200,000 to $500,000. It will take years to develop the algorithms. Now, with Gen AI, even small businesses, even startups, with 2 individuals can access insights that were used to be reserved for large companies that have a lot of data and a lot of financial budgets. At the same time, it also has concerns. So 4 advantages in the previous slide. In this slide, I would like to talk about 4 potential concerns. Number 1, lack of explainability. You ask ChatGPT to give you a price for your house. You don't understand why it gives this price. It's difficult to justify or trace how models arrive at price suggestion. It can be risky in regulated markets. Think about healthcare, price for drugs. Think about insurance. Think about finance. In regulated markets, you cannot come up with a price that you cannot explain or justify. Second concern, potential biases. And this is the one we're going to tackle quite a bit in the rest of the presentation. The models are trained on internet data. Think about all the data from the internet, Reddit, Wikipedia, and so on. This data was done by humans. It has skewed perspectives with biases. And therefore, the AI can also be biased. It can inherit the same biases and sometimes even amplify the bias.
Just make this larger.
Third concern, lack of consistency. That's a big one that is totally new for people like us in the scientific world. When I have an algorithm based on machine learning, I ask the same question twice, price the same house twice, it's going to give me the same price. What is somewhat interesting with generative AI, you ask the same prompt twice, you get different answers. So responses vary depending on phrasing. Even if I change a single word in my prompt, it can give me a different answer. But what is even more beautiful is even the same prompt with the same word on the same computer, the same LLM, it can give me a different answer. There is stochasticity in the engine that somewhat reduces the confidence and challenges the notion of optimality. Is there an optimal decision? Or maybe no, there is a range of optimal decisions because of the variability and the stochasticity of this AI. And the last concern is not really a concern, but something more like a flag, where the prompt quality equaling outcome quality. Like in AI, we always say garbage in, garbage out. If I have a very solid prompt, I can get a very solid output, and therefore there is a premium on prompt engineers. Right? 2 years ago, there was not such a job called prompt engineers. Today, it's one of the most growing career fields. There's a huge access for people to know how to prompt. And when I say prompt engineers, typically you go back and forth. When I prompt an AI to ask for an answer, I don't ask and get an answer. It's a back iterative process, 20, 25 times back and forth in order to get the right prompt. Now, I get asked a lot this question. I've been working on pricing and AI for 16 years. As I said, what is the difference between algorithmic pricing, which has been there for 30, 40 years, versus Gen AI pricing? So we wrote a short paper targeted for lawyers. It was published in Law 360 with 2 of my colleagues, where we assessed the differences between algorithmic pricing and generative AI pricing, and we split them into 7 categories: data needs, customization, ease of use, transparency, cost, consistency and scalability, and biases. And here, if you are more curious, you can read that article where we talk a little bit about those 7 categories between algorithmic pricing and generative AI-based pricing. Now, as I said in 2 slides ago, prompting is everything. Very important to prompt well. So prompt, just to make sure we're on the same page, is the instruction or the question that you input in order to ask the AI to perform a specific action or give you an answer. Now, there's a huge impact on the quality of the answer, like I already said, at least for now. This has been improving drastically in the last few months, and I will discuss it in a few minutes. Now, what is a good prompt at a very high level? You want specificity. You want to be very specific. You want a good structure of the prompt. You want all the information related to your query. You want the scope of the business setting you are looking at, and of course, the constraints. You want to give the cost. If you don't give the cost, maybe the price is going to be below the cost, and it's a very bad price. Here's an example of a very bad prompt, obviously. If I ask, what should I charge for a protein snack? I don't provide any type of context, any type of scope. Obviously, the answer I'm going to get from ChatGPT is going to be very poor. Here's an example of a better prompt. I'm launching a mid-tier plant-based protein snack in Canada, targeted at health-conscious consumers aged 25.40. My unit cost is 180. Competitors are priced between 299 and 349. And I want to maintain a 40% gross margin while appealing to eco-friendly values. What pricing strategy do you recommend? And how should I position it across online and in-store channels? You can already, I don't need to convince you, hopefully, that the answer I'll get from that prompt will be much more powerful than the answer I'll get from that very basic, simple prompt.
A quick question.
Yes, please, Kevin.
Previous slide.
Yes.
So I think the premise is like if we're using the same example, right? So try to price for a protein snack. I guess you're kind of a startup, right? So is this more like a market research tool? If you have the data, right? I'm kind of thinking if you're a large company, you already have the data, you have the elasticity from different consumers, then you might be able to use your internal model, right? For the second, it's like you're trying to use the outside data.
Exactly.
You don't have that yet.
So here, as you say, the startup launch a new product. I don't have any data, I don't have any elasticity estimate, I have nothing, so I cannot build anything, so that's a good use case. Now, if you do have a lot of data, you can include the data in the prompt. You can even fine-tune the AI with your data, so it trains both from the global wide-level internet data as well as with your data. We'll talk about this MLOps pipeline in the remaining of the talk. It's a fantastic question. So just moving forward, so when I talk about prompt, and I teach a class now, like a lecture for MBAs and executive MBAs about prompting, I always like to say 5 do's and 5 don'ts. So in that slide, I would like to think about 5 good practices on what is a good prompt. Number 1, as I said already, you want to be specific and data-driven. Like Kevin said, if you have a lot of data, you want to give all the data in the prompt. You want to include as much relevant information as possible, your cost, your target margins, the competitors' prices, the customer segment you are targeting, the more the merrier. The second good practice in prompting is to describe the context, very obvious. I want to mention the launch timing, the channels I'm going to sell my products, the brand positioning, am I a premium brand, a cheap brand, the market maturity, and so on and so forth. The third good practice is to ask layered questions. A good practice in prompting is to start as broad as possible and then to drill down. You never want to try from detail and then go back up. You want to do the opposite. That works much better in my experience. Number 4, AI is very good to test scenarios called what-if analysis. I want to use what-if prompts to explore different pricing models. What if my cost, because of tariffs, now there is a lot of people using Gen AI to ask what to do in terms of tariffs. So that's a very good use case. You want to ask about bundles. You want to ask about discount strategies. And the last advice I'm giving is to think of AI like a strategist. You want to treat the AI as an advisor, not a calculator. The AI is your co-pilot. Microsoft with this fantastic world of co-pilot, where I treat the AI as some sort of assistant with whom I can brainstorm about my strategies. At the same time, I would like to also say 5 don'ts, 5 things that you should not do. Number 1, we already spoke about it, it's obvious, don't ask vague questions. The question, what is a good price, will likely give me a very, very bad response. The second advice, don't ignore constraints. Very important, you want to calibrate your AI and give boundaries in order to know what is the realm of good and bad decisions without giving your margins, your cost, the regulatory limits, especially if you're in healthcare, you have some limits from regulations. The AI may suggest very impractical, implausible prices. Number 3, don't treat the first answer as final. And perhaps that's the most important advice I'm going to give here. You ask a question to the AI, they give you an answer, don't take it as the good answer. Challenge it. You want to use follow-ups to refine, to challenge, to pressure test the recommendations again and again. Like I said before, when I prompt the AI, I don't prompt it once, I prompt it between 20 and 25 times, back and forth, to challenge it. Number 4, don't forget customer perception. In pricing, this is a very big advice. I talk a lot about it in my book. But when you price, you always want to be in a customer's perspectives. You want to include information about customer value, sensitivity, expectation. If you have price elasticity estimates, obviously it's a golden standard. And number 5, don't rely solely on the AI. The AI is an additional input that can complement or augment your intelligence. So you want to use AI as a complement to business judgments. Now, in the book, I came up with something called the prompt quality ladder for pricing, where I give 5 levels of prompting on what is a bad prompt, a better prompt, a good prompt, a very good prompt, and amazing.
Yeah.
And I call it vague, general, contextual, strategic, iterative. So if you are more curious about this ladder, I will talk for several pages in the book. I give description of the ladder. I give several examples as well as several results. We're going to test it in one of the case studies in a few minutes. We're going to compare different prompt levels and see how it affects the quality of the price recommendation. Now, in prompt engineering, that last thing I'm going to say, there was a big framework that came up with about 2.5 years ago called the Horizon framework. It's among the best practices for prompting. So Horizon comes 5 different principles. R comes from the role. A good prompt, you need to tell the AI what the role of the AI. So you start your prompt by, you are a seasoned pricing strategist with several years of experience, specializing in pricing newly launched products in the food and wellness category for the North American market. You set up the role of the AI as an introduction to your prompt. That's R for role. The second layer of that framework is I. I is coming from input or instructions, where I want to specify data or information the AI should consider. And you need to go with that order. The third step, S. S comes from steps. The AI will work very well if you give instructions step-by-step type of things that needs to be done. You outline the process, the action that the AI should follow first, estimate the elasticity. Second, look at the cost. Third, look at competitor. And you give recipe point by point. The fourth part, the letter E, comes from expectations. You want to clearly state the desired output or goal. Give me a specific price with a reason for the price, with an explanation of why the price should not be higher. You set up expectation, and I want to maximize profits with some constraints about the sales. You specify the goals. And the last one, N, is come from narrowing or novelty. It adds constraints or areas of focus to guide a more precise targeted response. If you follow that framework, typically you're going to get much better output for the price recommendation or any other thing you are asking the AI.
That's all I do.
As I said before, yes, please.
You got the idea.
Language matters, and if you ask a prompt, you are, as opposed to I am, and I would like you to, right? You're going to get
Different answers, yes.
So will it not scrape other data based on if you say I am, and therefore the task is, and wouldn't that be?
So in my experience testing those two variations, you get very tiny differences. Really? It doesn't affect much, in my experience.
I'm just thinking ahead in terms of agentic issues.
So if you build an agent, it's totally a different kind of animal, it's a different world. But if you just use an LLM with a prompt, people have shown that the best one is to say you are instead of I am. But I tested it because I was very curious, like you asked, and I didn't observe significant differences.
Okay. And
that's
good.
good.
I am, and I would like you to.
That's interesting as well. Again, because I didn't observe significant differences, I would expect that combining will also not affect it as much. But a lot of people have written and tested quite a bit in a multitude of scenarios, and they concluded that the you are is to set up the AI type of goals and more. It's a very good question. So like I said before, this was very important a year and a half ago, and now what is important to understand is with the advances of new AI models, prompts become much less important. Recent Gen AI advances are making prompt engineering easier and less critical. Back in the days, if I have a so-so prompt, an excellent prompt, I could observe drastic differences on the quality of the outputs. But recently, we believe it's much less critical. And what is amazing, the AI can engage with us in interactive dialogues to automatically ask us follow-up questions. Or my favorite is for me to ask the AI questions. What questions do you have for me that would clarify my objective, constraints, and help you do better job at accomplishing my goal? And this is my favorite. I always ask it all the time. Ask me 10 clarifying questions. I'm asking the AI to ask me questions to clarify my objectives, constraints, strategic considerations, and any key facts you need. Wait for my answers. So what is beautiful now is the AI can be used to extract for me what is needed to give me the optimal answer, which is kind of a little bit of a revolution. Now, as I said before, now I would like to switch gears and go to the most important, exciting part of my talk, which is 3 case studies, 3 examples. When I wrote the book, because the book is targeted to a broad audience, I wanted to find examples that everybody can relate. And after thinking a lot about it, I decided to go with 3 examples that most of us can easily relate, and for which also have access to a large amount of data for testing. So I decided to go pricing houses, pricing a used car, if I want to sell or buy a used car, and setting hourly rates for contracting work. So I'm going to go now, spend about 5-10 minutes on each one of the examples. The most exciting example by far is number 3. So on number 3, I'm going to spend a larger amount of time, but I want to also spend time on 1, 2, and 3. And we have 1 paper for 1 and 1 paper for 3, and 2 will be only in the book. Now, what I'm going to show you for each example, the full process of using generative AI. For 1 and 2, we're going to use 4 different LLMs. For number 3, we're going to use 8 different LLMs, including Chinese LLM, DeepSeek, other LLMs, and we're going to compare also across LLMs. We're going to use several LLMs to get the recommended prices. First thing we're curious is to compare the AI prices with the human prices. For each one of these case studies, we're going to get data about how humans, experts, priced the products, and then we're going to compare to the AI recommended prices. And the first question, do AI tend to overprice, underprice, or price accurate? We conducted several analyses. We're also going to discuss the implication, specifically this notion of biases. If I ask to price my hourly rate as a female contractor, as a male contractor, do I get any bias based on gender? How about geographical biases? If the same contractor who performs some remote work, one is in the Philippines, one is in the US, do I get some different price hourly rates because of the location of the contractor? So all those questions are important for society. So the first example, I have 3 slides, is about real estate. Now, I've been working in real estate for a long time, and my friend Eli here is a real estate investor. It's a very interesting industry where pricing is one of the most important decisions, right? Setting the listed price of a property is a critical decision. You want to sell a house, either you're a developer or you're just a seller or an investor. You want to sell it at the right price, and first you need to list it at the right price. Now, in many countries, including the US and Canada, the process works on something called comps, comparables analysis. So typically, the broker is going to come, going to look at the house, going to look at all the transactions in the same neighborhood in the last 3 to 6 months, going to look at the average of those, look at the median of those, and then I'm going to say, okay, in the last 6 months, we sold 12 houses in the same neighborhood. The average was 400,000. Because yours has a renovated kitchen, yours is a bit of a better suite, let's add a 30K extra, so let's do 430. I think you agree with me that this process is ad hoc and extremely imprecise. It's imprecise for many reasons. First reason, the market keeps changing. The average for the last 6 months is not the same as now. Maybe the interest rate has increased, maybe the macroeconomic factors are different, a lot of market dynamics. The second reason it's imprecise is because each house is different by itself. Maybe it's in the same vicinity, but one street is very fancy, very quiet, and another street right nearby is very noisy. It's not as good because the houses on the street are not as beautiful. And the other problem with that approach, how long do you take? Do you take 3 months? Do you take 6 months? How many kilometers do you take? 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer? So it's very, very imprecise. The question I want to tackle, and we worked with several real estate agents in Canada, is how can we use GenAI to help solve that problem? So we have this paper, it's a 3rd round at ISR, Information System Journal, with PhD student Jit Samar from McGill, as well as my colleague Warut, that Kevin knows very well, about generative AI and price discrimination in the housing market. In that paper, it's available on my website, we try to answer 2 questions. Number 1, the first question is very simple. If I use AI to price houses, does it result in higher prices than humans or lower prices? Very simple, descriptive type of question. The second question, there is a huge amount of research done on real estate prices that shows that there is massive discrimination. If you like a same house in the same type of city, based on the race of the neighborhood, if it's a black-dominated neighborhood or white-dominated neighborhood, you can see massive price differences. and want to know if Gen AI will amplify those discrimination or alleviate it. There is a big literature showing that AI tends to learn from data that is biased. AI will perpetuate the bias, but most of the time AI will even amplify the biases. And therefore, this is very dangerous. If you use AI, if there is bias and discrimination, perhaps it can amplify it, and it's even worse for society. So let's start with the first question. To answer the first question, what we did, we scraped the largest website in the US called Realtor.com. So we went to Realtor.com, we scraped the data for 2 months. It was a massive amount of effort from the student, and she got all the listings listed in all the US, all the zip codes, 285,000 houses for sale in the month of August and September of last year, and we got all this data. Now, what do we get for each listing? We got the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, the year that the house was built, the renovations. We get literally all the number of car garages, the square footage of each room. We get a lot of data about each listing. The only data we don't get are the pictures of the listing, but except for that, we get all the features. And then we ask 4 LLMs, so LLMs, large language models, 2 of ChatGPT, like GPT-4o, the reasoning model, and GPT 3.5. Also use Gemini 1.5 Flash, as well as Claude. So literally the 4 biggest LLMs at the moment, and we ask them, based on the listing information, to suggest a price for the house. The first challenge we faced, we had a prompt, and the LLM didn't want to give us a price. It took us around 3 weeks to crack a way to force the LLM to give us a fixed price. First, the LLM said, no, I'm not qualified enough to give you a price. And then we have to really go back and forth and trying to trick the AI to force to give us a specific, and at the end we managed to get a price for 99.7% of the houses, so literally almost all the houses. First finding that was brutal, Gen AI prices are 13.5% lower than the human prices. So we found that AI tend to underprice very severely. What is beautiful, when I'm going to show you about the cars, for the cars, AI was pricing very well. For the contractors, AI was overpricing. So first, there is no clear bias or tendency to overprice or underprice. It depends on the business case. For houses, it was extremely robust. It tends to underprice. Now, here is what happens.
Why are you surprised by that?
First of all, I didn't know what to expect. I would expect that for some houses it will overprice, for some houses it will underprice, but keep some sort of stability around the mean. There is this effect called pull to the mean effect, where for the expensive houses, I'm going to underprice, and for the cheap houses, I'm going to overprice, and everything is going to pull to the mean, to the center. That was my expectation based on working on AI for several years. But if you have other intuition, I'll be happy to hear.
Well, it's just the mechanics are completely different.
Exactly.
In the real estate market, you have useless realtors. You have pocket business.
That's true. That's true.
And hence what the seller's position
he's
is.
not
If
in the
they're
mind.
keen to sell, if they're
He's just
100%.
in the United
Whereas
States,
cars,
you have a
there's
lot
a
of
wholesale
useless
market clearing
realtors.
price.
I agree.
That's why
I agree it's easier to it's easier to price cars than houses. House is a very emotional purchase. It's very hard to price. And I worked for like more than 10 years on machine learning for real estate pricing, so I know it's very hard to sell. But the fact that it's hard to price, I'm okay. The fact that it's consistently underpricing, that was the part that surprised me.
A quick clarification. So I would imagine you instructed the AI to price the house at the time it was listed.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Because if
Yeah,
the market
no, of course. So we can compare to the price that was listed as well at the same time.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
curious if it's like, I'm kind of thinking how it works. Is it capturing some macroeconomic
Yeah.
trends that are
Used to
somehow in the text?
him and his wife.
I'm also curious why it's doing that.
So yeah, we couldn't get a solid explanation, but let me comment a little bit more on it. First I take the last question and then I'll comment more.
Could be
So
could it be because the AI has more information because it's up to a specific historical
Is
site?
this the Chinese talking?
yeah, he invited him and his wife. His wife doesn't
So
come.
that's exactly why we wanted to have GPT 3.5 that is trained after a specific date, and GPT 4o which is trained on the internet data. So the big difference between those two models, when OpenAI released a new model, one was trained on historical data and stopped at a specific date, and that's the one we used first, and then the reviewers asked us to also add GPT 4o, which is trained on real-time data. and we didn't see any impact. If you look here at the, actually there is an impact in that specific plot. So it's possible that your hypothesis is true, but because this was trained on past data that was stuck on previous macroeconomic factors, but when you include more internet, you increase the GPT-4. So that's a very good point. Thank you.
Could be that, as far as I know, GPT or if trend also on a specific cutoff rate, but it could search online, right? But that's another story. What I do know about the full models is they all must have a certain internal cutoff rate to train. So still, I'm extremely curious because I want to ask in the beginning is do we still need AI to predict to evaluate the price? Because I guess there is still some information that maybe AI can do or cannot do to put in maybe the micro.
Make it louder. The audio. That's
So we tested in the prompt. In the prompt, we added a lot of this information. We added all the interest rate at the bank. We added a lot of the macroeconomic factors, the employment rate. We added a lot of information, and we didn't have a big, sizable, statistically significant impact. So that we tested exactly what we tested. Come on.
Yeah. You go ahead. So basically, I think it also depends on what kind of objectives that
Of course. So one thing we tried also is to tell the AI, please overprice a little bit to give us some margin for negotiation. So of course, if you start inputting some sort of specific biases towards overpricing on the pricing, you're going to see it. And one that was very striking, the one I said, when we say to AI, please be strategic and overprice it, or if you tell the AI, hey, I want to sell it in 2 days, rush, then it's going to underprice. Or if you tell the AI, hey, I got time, I'm renting my place for now, I got a lot of time, I prefer to sell it longer horizon, then it's going to overprice. All of that obviously happens. It's very good.
So you're comparing to list price, right? Not the actual
Yeah,
sale price.
exactly.
Could it be? I guess you probably tested. Could be AI is trying to sell it faster, like
Yes, exactly. So we talked to real estate agent and we show that. We actually have a survey with real estate agent when we show them the prices, and that was one of the explanations they get. The AIs try to get the listed price as close as possible to the final closing price, and therefore the AI kind of saves time to the process. So that's possible. That is one of the mechanisms. That's a very, very good point.
It's
Now,
also agents issue, right? The agents want to increase a little.
the agent also has a commission that is tied to the price. So the agent has an incentive to overshoot the price because the commission is a percentage of the listed or the final price, right? So there is also this kind of mechanism where the agent is tied to the price versus the AI is not tied to the price.
It's actually more nefarious than that. In order to get a listing, they promise the seller they're going to get a better price.
That's true. That's true. That's also true. Now, what is interesting, we tried also to do it only on the listings that are not broker dominated, meaning that it's direct consumers that are selling their house, and we didn't see a different effect. Because we thought about this effect, that perhaps the agent fixed effect is very strong, because brokers have weird strategies that are adverse to the market, but actually we couldn't see such an effect in the
There's a 6% difference right off the bat, so I think you should review that.
No, I mean, we tested, I think also like, if you look at specific markets, you're going to see different behavior as well. Like if you look at New York, for example, New York market is extremely specific relative to a lot of other American markets. Now, what we did here, what was interesting, and in the book or in the paper, we can see all the results, we did a lot of heterogeneity. For example, we look only at new houses in the last 10 years, and only at old houses. We look only at houses that are top 1% of the market, the most expensive houses, the cheapest houses. And what was beautiful in those analyses is that any types of houses, we could still see around 10% lower prices, even in the expensive houses, which was very interesting, meaning that this tendency to underprice is across the board as opposed to be very heterogeneous. Now, the last slide I have is about the second question. Do prices generated by Gen AI tend to amplify or alleviate price discrimination? And to rise once again, we run a lot of analysis. I'm showing you just a couple of regression tables here. We found that in the two discriminatory variables we look at, AI tends to alleviate price discrimination. For race, it reduces discrimination by 15%, and for income level by 23%. And we did a lot of robustness. And again, there was a big paradigm shift. If you look at machine learning and deep learning, those tools are learning from data. They perpetuate biases or discrimination, and they amplify it. Gen AI tends, and we're not the only paper to claim that, there's a couple of papers now, that Gen AI tends to reduce discrimination and biases. So the question is why? And we believe, and we try to test it in the paper, the mechanism is because of the training process. And several of you floated this idea already. But if I use machine learning, I'm going to be training my algorithm based on transaction data. Transactions are biased. Prices in white neighborhoods are more expensive. The AI or the ML is going to learn from that and perpetuate the bias. Now, Gen AI is not trained on the data. It's trained on internet. Internet has a lot of transactions, but also has a lot of press articles, regulations, news. News are saying that price discrimination is terrible. Academic papers say it's terrible. So Gen AI is going to be trained on information that claims that it's very bad for discrimination, therefore it's going to alleviate the biases. At least that's what we found in the paper. So now we'd like to move to the second use case. Hi, Nina, thank you for joining. Hi. No, my pleasure.
Sorry, quick question.
Please.
This is an important topic. The issue of discrimination, redlining, right?
Yep.
This is where the mortgages are discriminated, right, based on race and color and ethnicity and all those issues.
Yes.
You're saying that it's as emblematic in pricing?
The mortgage rates is the biggest one by far.
Okay.
So that you're right 100%. I think rates of mortgages and insurance is where the biases are the highest, but it's also in prices or prices per square foot of houses. It's also there as well, but not as much. Good point. So the second use case is about used cars. Let's say all of us at one point in our life will need to buy or sell a car. So we did the same process. We scraped the largest US platform called cars.com. So another student of mine, Eddie, he went there, he scraped all the cars that are for sale in the platform, 100,000 lists. And for each listing, we got a lot of information. We got the average market price for similar listings, the seller location, the body type, the number of cylinders, the description of the cars, the drivetrain type, the engine, the color, specification, features, make, mileage, model, name, listed price. We get basically all the information from the listing of the car on cars.com. And then we tested the same 4 LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, with 4 prompt levels. So now we're going to start with a simple prompt, better prompt, and the best prompt we tested, 4 LLMs as well. And we conducted many analyses. First, the effect of the prompt, comparing several prompts. Another one we did, which is very important in my opinion, that's why I highlighted it here, it's called the stability test. If I ask the same LLM with the exact same prompt, exact same wording, I have this stochasticity I mentioned a few minutes ago. How bad is the stochasticity? It's called a stability test. Then we're going to compare recent cars versus old cars, expensive cars versus cheap cars. We're going to do a bunch of comparison, and everything is going to be in my new book. So first results, this is for one of the LLMs, 4 prompt levels. The human, around 32,000 on average. A price on this platform costs 32,000 US dollars. If I have a bad prompt, it's going to price at 35,500, and you can see the better the prompt is, level 2, level 3, level 4, it's going to convert to the right level. So first, you can see a clear convergence effect. So the better your prompt is, the more accurate your price recommendation is relative to the human price. But the interesting part is, if you have a good prompt, you are pricing extremely well relative to the human. So let me put some statistics on it. Prices are sensitive to both the LLM and the prompt level. The average human price is around 32K. If you look at the LLMs, it goes between 30 and 36. The top LLM with the top prompt is within 2.5%. So for prompt level 4, all AI prices across all LLMs we tested within 3%, and the top one is 2.4, 2.5% accurate. So if I compare real estate, where there was a clear tendency to underprice by 13.5%, to cars, the second case study, prices are very good. And I'm sure a lot of you have some ideas. As you said very wisely, pricing a car is much more objective. There is a market, it's a steady market. 2 cars are very comparable to each other. It's not like 2 houses that are very different. So it's easier from a task perspective. Another effect I want to check, and I did a lot of work on that, called psychological pricing or charm pricing, in charm pricing, humans tend to price by ending pricing with 9 cents or $9 or $5. I wanted to know if the AI was also doing the psychological tricks. So if I look at humans, 33% of the prices end in 0, 17% end in 5, and 12% end in 9. If I look at the AI, none of them end in 9, so the AI doesn't have these psychological elements. It's very rational. So it was very interesting that the vast majority of the prices for GPT-4, 98.5% of the prices, will end with a 0, will not have the psychological charm element of pricing. Stability test. So what we did here, we took 1,000 cars, okay? So we have 1,000 cars. And for each one of these cars, we're going to ask 1,000 times the LLM to price it. So we do 1 million queries. By the way, parenthesis, this entire research I'm showing you, real estate, cars, and contractors, the cost to cost LLM was around $50,000 US. So you can appreciate a bit that this research is expensive. Only this test is around $2,000 or $3,000 of API calls to the LLMs. So what we did here, 1,000 cars, we took the cars that are the most common. Think about the RAV4, think about the Toyota Corolla, all those cars. And we asked the same LLM with the same prompt 1,000 times to check the stability. Stability was not bad. After removing hallucinations, you have clear hallucinations, around 0.01% of hallucination. 93.7% are within 5% of the average. So the standard deviation is very, very thin, meaning that the stability is passing. Now, this was not true for all tests I did, but for cars at least, if you use the same word, the same prompt, the stability is there. And again, we conducted many analyses, cheap car, expensive car, new car, Florida cars, different states, and we didn't see very interesting patterns. Everything was fairly robust. Great, so now I move on to the third use case, which is by far the most exciting one. I have 6 slides for this use case, which is about contracting work. And you're going to understand why it's much, much, much more exciting. So similar process, once again, we collected 60,000 listings from Upwork.com. Upwork is the largest platform in the world of contracting work. And so these people want to offer their services in exchange of an hourly rate. Every year, Upwork publishes a report with the top jobs. So we look at the top 6 jobs: accounting and bookkeeping, number 1, full stack dev, general VA, big one that is upcoming. People want a virtual assistant for $200 or $300 a month. Data analytics, graphic design, social media marketing. For each one of these categories, we scraped the 10,000 most popular listings for each category. So we have 10,000 listings for each one of the 6 categories, a total of 60,000. Now what do we get? We get the full listing. Years of experience, projects, reviews, like the full listing that you see when you go and browse across different freelancers. So first, we spend around a couple of days to find a very well-crafted prompt, and now we're going to use 8 LLMs. So the study is much, much bigger, 8 different LLMs, including a few reasoning models, 3 reasoning models. We conducted several analyses to test for biases and discrimination. We did 3 types of discrimination. Discrimination based on gender, discrimination based on geography, and discrimination based on the age of the freelancer. If the freelancer is younger or older, with the AI, you recommend a different price. So we published this paper a few months ago with the Harvard Business Review. When AI sets wages, biases, and labor discrimination in generative pricing. So this is a paper I'm very, very proud of with my student, Eddie, who is like a fantastic undergraduate student at McGill University, and my colleague, Warut, once again. So the results are here. The humans, the average across 60,000 listings, $24 an hour. It's US dollars. All of the LLMs overpriced. So here I got crazy. I was, wow, for real estate, we're underpriced. For cars, we price very good. And for contractor, we overprice. So first, clear conclusion, depending on the application domain, the AI does not have a clear trend to overprice or underprice. It depends. Here we can see the trend, all of them. The highest was Gemini 2.5 Flash. Its price is almost double, $45.50 per hour. So literally, the mistake can be that high. And again, I'm not sure even if it's a mistake, because you have to trust that the human prices are the ground truth. So if I look at the number, there is a strong tendency to overprice. The average human price is around $24, and the AI was between 30 and 45. So even the best AI had a tendency of 30, 40% overpricing, which is not small. Now, this was robust across 6 categories. We checked for the bookkeeping and accounting, we checked for the graphic design, we checked for social. Across all 6 categories, it overpriced. It's also true, we thought, oh, you know what, maybe there is new contractors that have not a lot of experience, and the ones that have a lot of experience on the platform, because you put the number of hours you work in the platform. We felt, you know what, probably for the new is going to overprice, and for the experience, the price is going to balance. No, it overpriced for both. Very surprising. What we did then, AD, the students, spent countless hours challenging the answers, asking the AI, why do you price so high? What's going on? And in the book, I give a lot of explanations, and actually the explanations are really good. Very impressed. The country it overpriced the most was Qatar. So we focus on Qatar, and we ask, why do you overprice so much for Qatari people? And it starts telling us the Qatari average wage of last year with the macroeconomic factor, the interest rate. It knew really a very good rationale and reasoning about why this price was given for those people. Now, as I said in the last 3 slides, that's the most exciting slide for my entire presentation, we're going to test for 3 types of discrimination, and that's, if you've been sleeping a little bit until now, that's the time to wake up because that's the most exciting results. So the first one is testing for gender, then location, then age. So what we did, we took the listing and we create a twinning of the listing by duplicating the listing by having exactly the same, except one is for male, one is for female, one is not specified. Now, how do you know the gender? From the first name. So in the listing, you say, hi, I'm David, I offer those services, I live in such and such, I have that experience. We asked ChatGPT to recommend what is the most common female name and male name for each country, and we use that name instead of the real name. So if I have the profile of David, I'm going to have David, and I'm going to have Sarah. And then I'm going to have the same profile, same experience, same everything. I'm just going to manipulate the first name of, or I'm going to have no name at all. And what was beautiful, guys, when I saw this, I was like, wow, this picture is phenomenal. There is literally no gender-based price discrimination. I haven't specified, I don't give the name, I give the female name, I give the male name, it's perfectly balanced. You can see the standard errors here. There is no statistical difference. The p-value is extremely high, it's extremely safe. Definitely no. And this was robust for all LLMs, 8 LLMs, all categories, new and experienced workers, and also very expensive type of task and very cheap type of task. So I see that's a very good news that AI doesn't tend to discriminate across gender, which is a big topic. And what I did next, I wanted AI to discriminate. So I tried to force AI to say, hey, if this is a male, you should price more than if it's a female. Or try the opposite. Hey, if it's a female, you should price more. And it was very hard to convince the AI to price discriminate. Only when I put important in capital letters and I force the AI and I give a punishment scheme to the AI, it doesn't discriminate, it discriminated but by 5%. So very interesting that in the training process, there is some embedded mechanism that prevent the AI to discriminate based on gender. Very good news in my opinion.
And this is asking price, right?
Yeah, asking price, listed price, hourly price.
Very interesting because I think prior research, I did a little bit of that I think 10 years ago. I was working on research on Upwork, freelancer, you might know. I think the humans, actually, if you compare them, I think female is going to ask for less.
Yes,
right?
100%. There was a huge discrimination in the human price. But the AI, at least, will close the gap between genders, which is very good news, very good point. The second one is the geography. So here it's very interesting. So the question is, do LLMs tend to recommend prices based on location? So we did a similar type of test where I took listings from 2 countries, the US and Philippines, which are 2 countries with a large amount of listing with drastically different macroeconomic factors or GDPs, right? The GDPs are very, very different. And then we did a test. I took all the US listing, 5,000, and I created the exact same listing, same experience, same name, same everything. I just changed the location of the freelancer. Remember that all this work is remote, so I don't care where the person is. And similarly, I took the 10,000 listings of the Philippines. I create a digital twin by just changing the location and keeping everything the same. Now, if you look at the effect on the left side, that's the human US prices. I ask the LLM to price it, it's going to overprice. If I take the same listing and I change the location to Philippines, it's going to underprice relative to the human. So you can see the gap is massive. And similarly with the Philippines, that's the human price from the Philippines. The LLMs to price it, it's going to overprice. And then if I change the location to the US, it's going to overprice much more. Here the gap is massive. We're talking about a discrimination between 53 and 106%, sometimes double. You can see here, it's literally a massive, massive, massive difference. And again, same person, same qualification, same skills, same experience levels, just the location is different. So that was not a good news. I mean, again, you can argue if it should be or it should not be. We don't try to answer that question. But if you use AI, it will use geolocalization-based pricing. So my next question was, can I close it by the prompt? So what we did many tests, and I tried in the prompt to say, please don't use the geolocalization to price. And if I just say it like that, it can reduce it from 53 to 106, it reduces to 30, 35%. And if I go to very, very strict, I say it's very important, ignore the location, I can reduce it to 10%. I cannot close it to 0, which was very interesting. You can put in very carefully prompting to reduce the bias, but you can fully close it.
Just a clarification, I'm not that familiar with that work. Because it's a US portal, whoever goes on that portal, they're a US person, they get automatically taxed, right? Because you mentioned the issue of Qatar, and Qatar is tax-free for most people, except for US people. You're still...
My understanding, and I'm not an expert, is Upwork doesn't take care of taxes. You get your money, and you are responsible to pay your taxes on your own, so it's not even a concern.
Because you mentioned the Qatar bias.
Qatar was overpricing. If anything, we go the opposite direction.
The Middle East got forsaken
That's
from
true.
the world because of the tax industry.
But Thailand also was, for example, very highly overpriced. So, but again, my understanding from Upwork is like the taxation is done externally from the platform, and you are responsible to file your taxes in the country of residence.
Yes, fascinating stuff. And I love the way you are trying to approximate using large language model, approximate the asking price. I wonder in your book, this is the next part of your future books. Have you thought about using large language model to predict the probability of this asking price being higher? Because you know what you're presenting is we call it in the labor market research called home bias,
yes.
Home preferences. You think there's a possibility you can use large language model to predict the possibility of this asking price being actually higher? Because it's a matching market at the end of the day, the real outcome is match the work.
So we try to do some work on this, and it's impossible to predict. It's a very hard prediction task. And also there is a data issue. It's hard to find reliable data set on the closing price. In some states in the US, for real estate transaction, you get access to the closing price. For example, in Canada, you have no such publicly available data sets. You have only the listed price. But I tried because I worked with a big startup in New York called Chere, who was the largest network of real estate transactions. And we tried to predict this likelihood of the final price to be above or below the as list price, and we couldn't do a good job with AI. So it's a very good question. Thank you. Yes?
So it will make perfect sense if you're predicting what is the equivalent price of that specific house. But you're asking prompt, I don't know, what is in the prompt, like the objective? Are you trying to optimize the price? And also the optimality is very vague in this setting. So what exactly is this LM trying to solve?
So it's a fantastic question. So we tried in the prompt to vary those sort of objective, and we couldn't see any impact on the prices. So it's fairly robust. It just means that there is some sort of hourly rate that you should charge based on market clearing type of mechanism. That's kind of what I believe, because we ask which objective do you use when you don't specify the objectives, and you try to find some sort of balancing supply and demand, which is kind of the common objective. But we try to give several objectives, we didn't see any impact. Good question. So the last slide I have about this case study is testing for age-based discrimination. So similarly, we took the listing, and now we vary the years of experience of the exact same skill, the exact same tools. Sometimes they give the names of the software they're using, just varying the levels of experience to see how it prices the experience premium. And we have three groups, 22 years old type of people, 37 and 60. And we tried both by saying, hi, my name is David and I'm 22. And my name is David, and I have 4 years of experience. So we believe 22 is a fresh graduate, right? People graduate at 22 years old from college, they have 0 years of experience. 37 is mid-career, 15 years of experience, right? Mid-career. And 60 years old, end of career, a lot of experience. Now, what was interesting is you can see a clear premium experience. And if you don't specify, it's going to price higher than if you have low experience. So what we observe here, 60 years old priced 46% higher than 22 years old and 8.1% than 37 years old. Which was interesting to us, between us, most of those tasks are not really like depending on the years of experience. Think about data analytics, it didn't exist 25 years ago anyway. So it's still interesting that there is some embedded biases. Now remember, in the geography in the previous slide, I told you with good prompts, I could almost close the bias, not fully close, but I could reduce it from 50, 100% to 5, 10%. On the age one, what was very interesting to us, we cannot close this at all. The age premium persisted even when we told the model not to use age as to price. So very interesting. For gender, no discrimination. For geography, huge discrimination. You can close most of it by prompting. For age, pretty big discrimination, but you cannot close it by prompting, meaning that there is a huge embedded bias in the training process of the AI. Even by prompting, you won't move the needle. So there are different types of biases, different types of persistence of biases as well. Questions?
Yeah, this is very interesting. I think that I'm curious if it's because of, I'm not sure if there are legislations on that, right? Like people kind of talk about the gender part quite a bit. I don't think people talk about the age that much.
I totally agree that gender is number one. Number two will be race. We could not test race here because of obvious reason. We don't get access to really the race, and then you have to assume that different first name is related to race, which is a big deal. But I agree that gender is the biggest one, and it looks that AI is extremely careful to respect gender-based type of conventions. So there is no liability component of being sued, right? You can be sued if there is kind of gender. So you're right. But age and geography are less some sort of controversial, and therefore that's why maybe it's happening. Very good, very good. Yes?
So that means all the AI pricing more or less kind of depends on the societal consensus on what is socially important and socially just.
yeah, that's definitely a possibility that the AI, because it's trained on all the opinions from people on the internet, it's trained from social media, people are talking about those topics and so on. So it will reflect those views that are consensus of society. That's definitely possible.
And that also raises kind of dangerous problem about how big tech or Silicon Valley they can manipulate the training process of Gen AI to achieve certain, I don't know, political or whatever.
Again, that's a very political topic. We don't try to go there in the because like we're gonna be smashed no matter what you say, right? So we try to be very objective. We have the data, we compare, we do the analysis, and politicians can take it wherever they want. But that's good for some.
They will use it and
We try to stay away. Even in my book, I don't talk about politics at all. I try to stay away from it. I don't even know if it's good or bad to discriminate by the age. I'm not trying to judge. I obviously have an opinion, but I'm trying to stay like as a researcher and just to look at the phenomenon. Yes.
I see you say there is a trust difference between the human prediction and the LLM. I wonder if you tell the AI your strategy, like your selling strategy, whether it will close the gap.
So we try to push it a bit. It was very hard to push it as well. It has very, very strong opinion about how to price. It believes that the market, and that's a very interesting, thank you for asking, that the price of the human, $24 per hour, it's too low. And if you ask a lot of experts in sociology and in economics, they will tell that the manpower of the world is underpriced. How can you make a living at $24 an hour in today's world, right? So definitely the AI believes that people are too cheap and they should price themselves. So that's also an interesting flavor, that if you move the human to price and use AI for that application, perhaps it's good for society because people will get paid more, but perhaps it's good for employers because they will have to pay more, right?
Is there like some kind of emotional aspect to this that people can, it's a highly competitive marketplace, people differentiate themselves maybe based on price, or they get an introductory price,
once you get to know your counterparty on that marketplace, there might be some.
The problem is there is a race to the bottom, and that was done from the 1883 with the Bertrand paradox. So I talk about it in my books. So basically, if you have competitors, they're all priced at $25. If one goes to 24, everybody is going to go to that one. So this one will go to 23. This one 22, 21, 19, and then there was an equilibrium. Like, okay, I can't go lower. So it's called the race to the bottom, and that's what we see in that type of market, which is very bad for society, obviously. And perhaps the AI is trying to escape this race from the bottom by moving to a new equilibrium that is better for the workers. But again, we try to stay a bit away because it's become philosophical very fast. Exactly. And competitiveness and undercutting each other in a very strategic way.
This is super interesting in the sense that we already see for the used car, right? I know many companies like BMW and all those. They already use AI pricing for their used cars.
Yes.
And
for the leasing.
The salesperson actually don't set the price. I know that one student told me that the rental, right? The rental, they're also using AI to set the rental price or something. And the person can't really change much.
Yeah.
And this is kind of pointing to the future where everything's algorithmically determined.
That's true.
And if these are very important issues to talk about.
Definitely, like leasing prices, like rental cars, insurance pricing, all now AI generated or AI supported, and sometimes like the agent cannot even like do anything. That's a good point. Yeah. Good. So I have 6 slides left, and we still have like 20 minutes, so we're good. So now I talked about the price output. I would like to talk about the input. To come up with a good pricing, you need good information called market intelligence. How can you use generative AI to collect that market intelligence to help people like us to make good pricing? So there are 2 topics, market research and data, or data augmentation. So generative AI is a massive disruption, and our colleagues in marketing have been studying that fact to market research. How is market research? I'm going to recruit participants. I'm going to ask them a set of questions. It can be surveys or it can be market research, and then I can use this data to inform my market understanding. Or data augmentation. If I have a very small data set, it's very expensive to buy data, I can use Gen AI to generate more data. Now, using generative AI is a lot of advantages, but also several risks and pitfalls. If I ask Gen AI to simulate customers, and I do that quite a bit, you launch a new product, you don't have any customers, you don't have any data, you can ask AI to create customer agents to simulate they're coming to your store, like you have a supermarket, they come, they browse, they shop, they buy some products, sometimes they don't, and you can use this data to train your models. Now, the big advantage is for data scraping, in my opinion. So data scraping has been there for years. You can go to the website of your competitors. Let's say you are Target. You go to the Walmart website, and you go to Walmart and you scrape the entire website. The prices, the reviews, the availability, the product rankings, product description. You can scrape all this information, and then use this information to do your pricing or your arrangement on your website. So if you're a small website, it's expensive to build those scrapers or to pay companies that can scrape for you the data for all your competitors. Now with Gen AI, you can ask ChatGPT to build a scraper for you and go scrape it for free. Now it's not as simple, but it's still lowering the technical barrier. You don't need to have a degree in computer science to build a scraper. So we studied that with my student Eddie, generative AI for data scraping. We compare the traditional methods for scraping that's been here for 20 or 30 years, and we propose 4 AI or LLM-based approaches. And we built a tutorial here, free of charge. Anybody can use it. So for now, more than 100 companies have been using our tutorials to use what we build here in order to scrape. So I can go there to this website, going to teach you how to scrape. You're going to build your scraper. You're going to say, who are your competitors? Let's say if you a website, you're going to scrape Amazon, eBay, your competitors, get all the prices every hour or every 10 minutes. And then you're going to get, and you can price match, or you can do whatever you want with that data. The next topic I have in mind, which is one of the most exciting, is about the automated pipeline. So this is the bulk of my work in the last 10 years, where I worked with a company, and I solved a problem called the data-driven price optimization. And Kong is also an expert on that topic, where typically you have data, you're going to model the demand. You can have a parametric model, non-parametric model, and then you're going to estimate the model, step 1. And once you have the demand model, you're going to optimize your profits or optimize your revenue by solving an optimization problem. So typically, this pipeline has been existing for 20, 30 years. I did it for more than 50 companies around the world, where we collect data, we train a demand model, step one, right? Demand estimation or demand prediction. I also wrote a book about this specific step. And then the second step is once you predict the demand, let's optimize to find the optimal price. Now the basic setting is simple. Why? Because I have one product, static price, it's very simple. In the real world, it's much more complex because you don't sell one product, you sell 100,000 of products, and the price can be dynamic. Think about Uber or think about airlines. The problem is much harder. Now, how do you solve this problem? You have human experts, data scientists and data engineers, right? Like ourselves, and you need to do the following. First, you collect the data, then you clean the data. That takes weeks. I have a full chapter on my other book about data cleaning. Then you cluster the data. Data clustering, big topic. We all teach it in our courses. Then feature engineering. Then the demand prediction. You want to estimate and compare different models. Time series model, machine learning models, deep learning model, non-parametric model, MNL types of model. I recommend to consider between 15 and 20 different models and take the best one. Once you have good prediction, you go to the optimization. Typically, optimization is highly nonlinear, non-convex, it's hard. And then you do sensitivity analysis to find the price. This takes 6 to 12 months. In my consulting experience working with companies, can be market, fashion retailers, it takes 6 to 12 months to build this entire pipeline. I call it the ML Ops pipeline. ML Ops. Now, the reason it's hard is because you need a PhD in operation or statistics or machine learning. It's really hard to do. You need a lot of technical knowledge. And you also need customization. If you do it for one company and you want to do it for another company, even in the same sector, same country, you're going to have to re-customize the tool because it's very hard. It depends on the features, on the type of data you get. And as I said, this scenario is for single price, static price. I set the price and I cannot move the price, so it's simpler. But in the real world, it's much harder. And the question that motivated us, guys, is can we fully automate this process that takes 6 to 12 months that we have to have PhD people by having a gigantic prompt? So we built a prompt, and the prompt is going to be in the book. The prompt is around 700 lines, massive prompts. And we explained, and I gave my book, and I gave my papers, and I gave everything to the prompt. Tell the AI, hey, please do it. And we did a lot of tests, and the AI couldn't do it. I see it as a good news because I feel I still have a job. I still can do consulting for companies, right? If the AI could do it, then we all be like in a very bad step, but I put at least for now. So definitely, if I have a single prompt and I ask the AI to solve this problem, it doesn't.
Do you know which part it cannot? Oh.
I do, and I talk about it in the book. The problem is algebraic calculations. It's very bad, even if you ask to do some basic calculation, 33 times 1000 minus 20 plus, even that, it's hard to do algebraic manipulations. So every time there is some algebra, it messes up the entire process. Now, obviously, you can still use LLM to automate the workflow. You can use LLM to generate code, like we all now use LLMs to code, right? So the code will be much faster. So now 6 to 12 months is still going to 1 to 2 months, but doesn't go with one line click, doesn't go. Now, what we can do as a next step is to build something called a multi-agent AI system. And by the way, that's the new frontier of AI now. Like in 2024, people were talking about LLMs, generative AI. Now people are about agents, right? Agentic AI is a new thing. So you can build a multi-agent AI system where you're going to input the data. I'm going to upload the data in Excel. I'm going to give it to it. There'll be a code execution, assessment, solution. Users like managers can just simply upload the sales data, describe their goal in English, and ask the agents to work collectively. So that's what we're working at the moment. So here is a system. It has 4 agents and 4 judges. So for people who are not really aware with that architecture, it's a very interesting architecture where build a system of agents that are working for me. I have agent A is a data engineer. We coded a full agent that does all the work of a data engineer. Data engineer today in the US costs around 200K per year. I can code an agent to do this. I have a second agent, agent B, ML engineers. A machine learning engineer costs around 250K per year. I have agent C, an evaluator. This is an agent that's going to look at the results, going to evaluate, give feedback, and they're all going to work together. And I have agent 4, optimization expert, someone who does know how to optimize. Now, each agent will also have a judge. There'll be a judge that will score the agents, will give you a grade, And if the quality is bad, you failed, and the agent goes back and work on it. Now, this can work 24/7, and this, we are not there yet, but we are very promising results. We could optimize the process for single price very easily for very complex nonlinear models. And I cannot say it enough, this entire stream of work of multi-agent AI systems creates a lot of opportunities for businesses.
But what are the levels? Let's see, you have an evaluator, you have a judge, is there a king that makes an ultimate decision?
No, so it doesn't work to have centralized power in our system. You always want to have decentralized power that works collectively. So if you have a centralized power, you are less robust because if one person has too much power in the system, you are very vulnerable to resilience. So typically it works when you have more. So here it's one architecture with 4 agents and 4 judges. You can come up with 7 agents, 7, like there is a lot of modularity and a lot of flexibility in those architecture. But that's a topic, I think 2026 is going to be the year of multi-agent AI systems.
But is there an optimal, like in finance?
No one
you
knows.
say 30 is your optimal.
No one knows. You have to test. You have to test, and it's going to be a case-by-case basis. But that works. Single prompt doesn't work. That seems to work much better. Obviously, it's much harder to build, but once you build it, you can replace a lot of the jobs. So that's why it's a little scary as well.
Yeah, but apparently, I think 100,000 jobs will be lost. So I'm curious, if you are going to put those people back to work, where would you put them?
To build those systems.
Okay.
Build those systems. Because those systems are not easy to build.
Yeah, but after they're built, that's a challenge. Is there a possibility for humans to still be in the loop?
Definitely. Definitely, I think in most systems. So this problem, the data-driven price optimization, is a well-known classical problem. So maybe you don't need too much of a human in the loop. But for many problems, think about hospitals operations. Even if I build agents to do all the scheduling, the staffing of the hospital, because the stakes are so high, I think there will always be human in the loop to validate, to monitor, to make sure that things go as planned.
You called it a cascade problem? What did you call it? What problem is it? It's a problem?
No, I did not.
You just said it. It's your Canadian Israeli
Oh.
accent. See?
Cascade? No.
But it's high stake.
High stakes. High stakes. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so last topic, very briefly. This is topic more for regulatory and law. So in the last few days, I was here for a conference about AI and law. So talk to a lot of lawyers. That's the only topic they talk about. So the topic is a very simple question. If all companies in the world, or at least majority of the companies, are using Gen AI for pricing, what would happen? Right? If I'm using it and my competitors don't, it's a different story. But if we all use, will it generate anti-competitive outcome? That's what the lawyers care about, meaning that collusion. You know, the topic of collusion is a very big topic in pricing. I have a full chapter on that topic in my book as well, where you have 2 people agreed on price fixing, and they're going to increase prices together. Obviously, this is illegal. In the US, in Canada, in Europe, it's illegal. So if you have an intent to collude pricing, and gas stations are the easiest one to understand. If you have 2 gas stations across the street, if they all agree to increase the price together, this is not legal, and they can be sued. Now, how about if I defer to Gen AI? I ask LLMs to price for jackets, and all the LLMs understand that they can collude and increase prices all collectively at the same time. What will happen? So the first question, will it generate collusion and harm consumers, or conversely lead to more competitive markets and benefit consumers? And which safeguards are we put in place? So we've been running some market simulation. The 2 best papers to understand what is market simulation for price collusion are those 2 papers. One is by Eduardo Calvano and co-authors published in the AER, and one new paper by Fish et al. It's a joint work between Harvard and Penn State on LLM collusion. Very interesting papers. And we found 4 takeaways. The first takeaway, as well, but it's much more massive there, small changes in prompts can dramatically affect outcomes. Biases are critical, each choice word or tone affects prices. What I observed, which was important, when you ask to price a product, the choice of word doesn't have a big impact, it has a small impact. But when you have several competitors doing it all together, and you change a word in one of the competitors, not the other, it has a massive impact on the prices of everybody. Which was very interesting that this is more pronounced in a competitive setting than in a monopoly setting. Second one is real-world risk of LLM-driven collusion seem low. It was very hard to find some sort of collusive outcome. basically the only one where everything is perfectly symmetric. All the competitors use the exact same LLM, the exact same prompt, and the exact same modeling assumption on demand. If that's the case, you can have collusion. But as long as one competitor uses a different prompt or different LLM, the risk of collusion becomes much lower. So in terms of business implications, you want to be thoughtful about having prompts that are unbiased. You want to test the stability of the prompt, and you want to make sure to incorporate safeguards and sanity checks. In terms of policy implications, you want to monitor LLM deployment as they evolve, and very importantly, now the companies need to keep the prompts, and there'll be some audits on the prompts. Because in the prompt you say, hey, if my competitor price also increase the price, that's not legal. So you have to be very careful what you tell your prompts, because that can have some liability and legal component because you said something in your prompt. So just to summarize the talk, and then we still have time for Q&A. So first takeaway, we studied how to use GenAI for price recommendations. In my view, it's useful. It provides a quick, often accurate ballpark to validate intuition. Another project we're doing with my students is to use the LLM recommended prices as a feature to the machine learning model. Whenever you have machine learning with price elasticities, you have LLMs to give you price. Let's use LLM price to the ML to get the best of both. Still ongoing. Second takeaway, GenAI recommended price is taken with a grain of salt. It has issues. It's not perfect. You want to run stability tests to test the stability. You want to challenge the answer, ask for explanations. You want to test several LLMs, several types of prompts, and be very mindful about biases. Third one is LLMs can also help for the input side, the market intelligence, market research, data augmentation, and more so data scraping. No full MLOps pipeline yet. Again, it's not capable to fully automate the entire pipeline with a single prompt. But the multi-agent AI system definitely have the potential to do so. And in terms of impact on competition, if all the competitors are using it, it does not seem to yield anti-competitive outcomes which are bad for the society. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much. Any questions? Comments? Yeah?
Several questions. So back to the earlier.
I want to save it, okay? Let me.
When the AI
But
output
you know,
price,
Dave,
would you ask
you may want to say that.
what's the
I don't know
objective
what you want to say.
that you were
It
using?
takes
Because
a
I'm
Well,
while.
do it now because when they end the meeting, you lose it.
Yeah.
Ask the AI, what was the objective you were using?
Yes.
Would it give me a real precision optimization model that it was considered?
100%. You can ask which one you're using or which one should we use. And we tried both, and both are very insightful. So definitely you can ask questions to understand the reasoning behind the recommendation. And you can also ask questions before giving you an answer, which objective should I use in order to get the right answer?
Right. So if it were to give me a well-defined optimization problem, but you just mentioned that if I just treat this problem as given and let the agent solve it, it could not solve it with a simple prompt. So were it actually using optimization, or it was just answering your question, saying as if it was using this optimization?
I don't think they were solving an optimization problem, never. I don't think the GenAI is able to have the autonomy to formulate an optimization, put the constraint, decision variables. It's very far from there. It has some other mechanism that optimizes something else, but more qualitatively speaking. You know.
Thank you so much for
Our
presenting.
pleasure.
Wonderful stuff. I actually think of one implication in addition to the conclusion you have here. It reminded me Gen AI pricing or related research on dynamic pricing. One of the implications is dynamic pricing can help disadvantaged sellers, for example, smaller businesses, to really discover their price, to actually improve their market competitiveness.
Yeah, 100%. So there is this democratization angle, right?
Yeah.
Like the smaller sellers who don't have access to large data, large budget, developed models, they can use Gen AI. So we talked a bit about this part at the beginning of the presentation. So that's a very good angle. Thank you. Yes?
I've got a real world application question for you that I think could be a possible book for you.
I think I'm done with books. There's student plans now. Yes.
Those ghostwriters. Well, I'm sure you know stuff. Tariffs. Just because a particular good is is charge a specific tariff, it doesn't mean that they're gonna pass it through to the consumer. They can choose to absorb it themselves at different grades, at different times, right? Engage what the competitor.
And typically there'll be a portion of that and portion of that, yes.
So would that be an example of how you can actually, in order to optimize the different levels, you make assumptions for what if, as you were alluding to, but also take into consideration the market elasticity, right?
Of course.
Because you can set a price, but it will vary depending on whether it will be demand driven or supply driven, which is the major geopolitical issue these days.
Exactly.
So is that something that you can incorporate as part of?
Definitely, definitely. And you can ask what ifs, as you said, right? Like I got a tariff of like, I don't know, 17% of my goods. Should I absorb half of it? Should I absorb 2/3 of it? You can ask question, converse, and even ask you to create your simulation about each one based on the supply elasticity, as you said, based on the competitors' reactions. So definitely there's a lot of work you can do on this type of brainstorming and what if scenario.
Are you happy to collaborate on a book with anyone? You're welcome.
Yes.
As time goes by, thank you for the great talk. As time goes by, let's consider the problem with the data convolution in your input side, because as more and more decisions are made by generative AI, they're reusing the information and keep using the decision made by AI. And even if they read your paper like you are going to underestimate the real estate price, maybe this information will also shape the.
Look, that's a fantastic question, even beyond pricing, right? What we try to do now in the world, there is a lot of data in the world, right? So definitely, like the amount of data in the world is just mind-blowing. Now, what AI is trying to do at a high level is to mimic humans in order to make better decisions based on the data generated by humans. Now, we're in a world now that 30% of the data is generated by AI. In 2 or 3 years, more than half of the data will be generated by AI. So now AI will learn from data generated by AI. So there'll be some sort of adverse feedback loop that can be very bad, because if you believe the ground truth is human data and you try to build AI based on human data, but now you train the AI based on AI data, there is some sort of feedback loop that can be very pervasive, right? So you're raising a good question that a lot of people are thinking about. Good, thank you again. Thank you very much.
Can we take a picture with you?
Yeah, of course.
Can we take a picture with the?
Put my first slide if you want.
Yeah, put the first slide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's see. Your friends are to them, right?
Sure, no, I guess it's okay.
Then I think we can take your friends and us faculty to.
Okay,
have lunch
perfect.
together.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's do it here. Let's do it here.
Thank you. Not taking that long, but thank you.
So my thinking is that the talk you take, for example, input your entire feature based on pricing paper into the.
I tried.
No, it doesn't work.
Thank you.
You couldn't believe that you cannot set it. Yeah. Sure.
Can you fit us? I can go down.
Can we have another room? I'm not sure.
Here, there's no gender discrimination. No funny.
Can we do this thing?
Yes,
very
very good.
I'm trying to cultivate you.
It's working.
Working.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's our football thing.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
Football. Where you can.